Um, Turn to Ephesians 5. Ephesians 5. And while you're turning there, I'm going to give you rookie mistake number one. If you're going to start a talk with a joke, and you've planned this joke, I write a newsletter article every week for the choir. And choir, you're going to hear this one. You're going to see this one in there too. But when you plan one, make sure you look at the pastor's Facebook page, because I found this on Facebook a couple of weeks ago. But then I was scanning through his Facebook page just about an hour ago, and it's like on his page. But I was going to tell you about this pastor who came up to preach, and he's getting ready to give the sermon for the day, for the Sunday, and he's really into it, and he's preaching hard. And about 10 minutes in, he looks up and he sees his son hanging over the balcony with a pea shooter, shooting kids in the back, shooting people in the back of the head. And he's like, he tries to ignore it, but then he keeps going, and it just gets worse and worse. And finally, he's about ready to say something to his son, and his son yells down to his dad and says, "Dad, great job, keep preaching. I'll keep him awake." So when you read it on Pastor's page in a couple later on, you'll know where I got it. I'm going to read Ephesians 5:15-21. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Therefore do not be unwise, but understand what the will of the Lord is. And do not be drunk with wine, which is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another in psalms, hymns, spiritual songs, singing and making melody in the heart to the Lord, giving thanks always for all things to God the Father, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, submitting to one another in the fear of God. That verse right there in the middle of it, speaking to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. That's kind of what I do for a living. And so I thought tonight, I am not a preacher, and so this is not going to be a sermon. It's more going to be a bunch of stories about hymns. We have been singing hymns all our life. The president of the seminary that Alice and I and Pastor went to, Paige Patterson, always said that the second best book of theology ever written after the Bible was the hymnal, because there's so much depth in those songs, and we've been singing them since we've been little, and at times we can get in a rut. We can sing the same songs over and over again, and we kind of forget what it means, what they mean. And sometimes we just want to sit back and think, what was God talking to this person about when he wrote that hymn, or when she wrote that hymn? What trial? What was he learning? What was he thinking about when he wrote that hymn? And so I've loved hymns. I've been collecting hymnals. I've got in my office about two shelves full of old hymnals dating way back into the 1800s, and I've got a bunch of books that are song story books that kind of go back into the stories of why a hymn was written. So tonight I thought I would, just to kind of help us refresh what these songs mean, and just kind of go through some of these stories of the hymns. And then as we look at them, and I'll have Jan come back up and we'll sing them. Well, the first one I want to look at, nobody in here probably, or very few people know, it's my favorite hymn. Turn to hymn number 147. Everybody knows the hymn, "And Can It Be?" And good, a few do. "And Can It Be" was written by Charles Wesley in 1738. And it's been around, obviously, for that long, but only until the hymnal that's in the pew right now. It's the first time since the turn of the century, the last one, that it was in a Baptist hymnal. So not many people know this hymn. Most of us know who Charles Wesley is and his brother John. They started the Methodist Church, the Methodist denomination, when they were students at Oxford University in London. And after graduation, they came to the Americas, came as missionaries to Georgia. Well, that missionary trip was not very good. They both went home. Imagine that, going on a mission trip sick. They both went home ill and very despondent and broken. Well, Charles, after he got back, met a Moravian pastor, Peter Böhler, who taught him about grace and true evangelistic Christianity. And in May of 1738, Charles read Martin Luther's book on Galatians and was convicted. Even after establishing a denomination and being a missionary to the other side of the world and being a ordained minister, he understood salvation for the very first time and gave his life to Christ. And they're very interesting to me. Again, this has been my favorite hymn since I was little. And I knew that the third verse of that hymn is his personal testimony. But until I read that, I didn't realize how parallel my story is to his story. I've kind of told some people, some of y'all know my salvation story, but I've been in church since I was standing up here singing since I was this big. I can sing in front of 10,000 people, but to make me talk in front of 10 just makes me freak out. But I've been singing. My mom played the piano, and my dad led the music, and grew up in a Quaker church in Ohio, and moved to Florida. We joined a Nazarene church, and then when I graduated from high school, moved to University of Florida. Lived on campus. The only church that picked up on campus was the Southern Baptist Church. So I started going to a Southern Baptist church, North Central Baptist in Gainesville. My freshman year, just went to the church, and they have an intern program where they hire college students to do work in different areas of ministry at the church, and they don't pay you, but they have a city block of houses, and they give you free housing. And so for a college student, that's a pretty good deal. And so my sophomore year, I moved to the church and started working as the music and media intern. I had all kinds of responsibilities, working with the choirs and the orchestra and stuff, and running sound was one of my big responsibilities. I was running sound one February week for a youth conference, and sitting listening to the speaker talk, and he was telling his story, how he had grown up in church and how he had gone off to college and got into a leadership position in ministry, and realized he had been living his parents' religion his entire life. And as he was telling his story, he was telling my story. I realized that here I am working in the church, and I'm lost as a goose. And so that next morning, I went to the college pastor's office and knelt and prayed to receive Christ. And so now looking back to this hymn, just seeing how his testimony and my testimony kind of interweaved, just made me even love this hymn more. So y'all turned, did I tell you the right page, 147? Okay, let's read. We're going to sing this, but before we do, I want to read the third verse. It says, "Long my imprisoned spirit lay, fast bound in sin and nature's night. Thine eyes diffused a quickening ray. I woke, the dungeon flamed with light. My chains fell off, my heart was free. I rose, went forth, and followed thee. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, should die for me?" Let's sing this. All right, y'all, I'm not going to make you stand for every one of them, but let's stand for this one. And can it be? We won't sing all 4 verses, but I do want to for this one, too. And can it be that I should gain an interest in the Savior's blood? Died he for me who caused his pain, for me who him in death pursued. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? Amazing love. How can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? He left his Father's throne above, so free through infinite his grace, emptied himself of all but love, and bled for Adam's helpless race. 'Tis mercy all immense and free. Oh, praise my God, it reaches me. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? In this great third verse, long my imprisoned spirit lay, fast bound in sin and nature's night. Thine eyes diffused a quickening ray. I woke, the dungeons flamed with light. My chains fell off, my heart was free. I rose, went forth, followed thee. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? And last one, no condemnation now I tread, Jesus and all in him is mine. Alive in him, my living head, and clothed in righteousness divine. Bold I approach the eternal throne and claim the crown, Christ my own. Amazing love, how can it be that thou, my God, shouldst die for me? What powerful words, powerful words. Amen. All right, our second hymn, turn to page 533. Y'all know this one. Matthew 28:6 says, "He is not here, he is risen, just as he said." Why should I worship a dead Jew? That question and a dreadful sermon inspired the hymn, "He Lives." Alfred Henry Ackley was an ordained Presbyterian minister and was called to a congregation in California. It was there in 1932 that Alfred met a Jewish man to whom he began witnessing to. But the man resisted the Christian faith, saying, "Why should I worship a dead Jew?" "Why?" he said. "Because he lives. I tell you, he is not dead, but lives here and now. Jesus Christ is more alive today than ever before. I can prove it by my own experience, as well as the testimony of countless thousands." Well, that question was going through his mind a few weeks later when he was preparing for his Easter Sunday morning sermon. He wakes up, does his morning routine, turns the radio on, and hears a liberal pastor from New York say, "Good morning, it's Easter. You know, folks, he probably didn't say folks in North Carolina, or New York, but folk, it really doesn't make any difference to me if Christ is risen or not. The main thing is, his truth goes marching on." Well, that really made him mad. He yells, "It's a lie." And his wife comes into the bathroom. "What are you yelling for so early in the morning?" He says, "Didn't you hear that good-for-nothing preacher? What that good-for-nothing preacher said?" Well, that really worked him up. And that morning, he preached a great message on the resurrection of Christ, and he did that evening, that night service as well. And he goes home, and he still was really worked up about what his friend had asked him, and then what that preacher on the radio had said. And his wife comes in again and says, "Listen here, Alfred Ackley. It's time you did that which you can do best. Why don't you write a song about it? Maybe it'll make you feel better." Well, that's what he did. He went upstairs to his study, reread the resurrection account in Mark's gospel. It says a thrill went through him, and he began writing the words to "He Lives." And a few minutes later, he was at the piano putting it to music. He wrote it in one night. He says, "The thought of Christ's ever-living presence brought the music promptly and easily." So I want to sing just the first and last verse of "He lives, Christ Jesus lives today." I serve a risen Savior, he's in the world today. I know that he is living, whatever man may say. I see his hand of mercy, I hear his voice of cheer. And just the time I need him, he's always near. He lives, Christ Jesus lives today. He walks with me and talks with me along life's narrow way. He lives, salvation to impart. You ask me how I know he lives. He lives within my heart. Sing rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice, O Christians, lift up your voice and sing eternal hallelujahs to Jesus Christ the King, the hope of all who seek him, the help of all who find. None other is so loving, so good and kind. He lives, Christ Jesus lives today. He walks with me and talks with me along life's narrow way. He lives, salvation to impart. You ask me how I know he lives. He lives within my heart. Amen. Our next one comes right out of Psalms 23, hymn number 422. I know I've made this joke before, but this was my grandma. My grandma always said this was her favorite hymn and her favorite scripture verse. "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Guess what her name was? Shirley. Yeah, surely goodness and mercy. She always said that was her favorite verse of the Bible and her favorite song because of that. Well, knowing that, when I read this story, I had to laugh. John W. Peterson is still alive today, and he wrote more than 1,200 gospel songs and 25 or more cantatas, Easter, Christmas cantatas for choirs, and still writes a lot. And this is what he said about writing this hymn. I'm going to just read this. It says, "One day, while improvising on the piano in my studio, Albert B. Smith, with whom I was associated at the time, walked in. For no particular reason that I can remember, we started to develop a new song. I would come up with a thought, and then Al. In a short time, Surely Goodness and Mercy was born. I had never worked with another writer in such a manner to compose a song. Later, Al and I wrote 2 or 3 other numbers like this." Okay. Well, Al had a different story. Let me read what he wrote. It was written after receiving a letter from one of the descendants of P.B. Bliss, which I'll talk about in a little bit, telling of Bliss's first country school teacher named Miss Murphy, whom he loved dearly. It told of her teaching the class before they could read and write to memorize the 23rd Psalm. When the part, "Surely goodness and mercy," was reached, little Philip thought it said, "Surely good Miss Murphy shall follow me all the days of my life." This little incident focused our thoughts on the phrase which became the heart and title of the song. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days. So let's sing a couple verses of this. First and last verse. Why don't you stand with me on this one? A pilgrim was I and a wandering. In the cold night of sin I did roam. When Jesus the kind shepherd found me, and now I am on my way home. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow thee all the days of my life. Third verse. When I walk through the dark, lonesome valley, my Savior will walk with me there, and safely His great hand will lead me to the mansions He's gone to prepare. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. How many know the little tag that goes on the end of that? You know that? And I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I shall dream in the temple fled for me. Back to the chorus. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. All right, have a seat. Amen. We're going to look at two together now. Hymn number 410, "It Is Well," and 575, "I Will Sing of My Redeemer." 410 and 575. Psalms 46:1 says, "God is my refuge and strength, a very present help in times of trouble." It's these two hymns, "It Is Well" and "I Will Sing of My Redeemer," have a very interesting relationship. Horatio Spafford wrote the words, and Philip Bliss wrote the music for "It Is Well." The story of "It Is Well" is pretty familiar, pretty well known. Philip Bliss, Horatio Spafford lost everything in the Chicago fire of 1871. A little later, his son died, and then he decided his family needed to get away for a little bit, so he sent his wife. He and his wife and his four daughters were going to go to Europe to get away. He wanted to go and meet D.L. Moody, the evangelist, in London to work with him in a revival. Well, he got tied up in some business, so he sent his family on ahead. And on the way there, their ship hit another ship and sunk. And all four daughters were killed. And his wife survived, was only one of like 37 of 400 on the ship that survived, got to London and sent a telegram back that just said, "Saved alone." Well, he left to catch up to her, and took a ship over. And when his ship crossed where they think the ship sunk, and his daughters died, he wrote the words, "When sorrows like sea billows roll." Yeah, can you imagine? Well, isn't it awesome though that he didn't stop there? The rest of that verse says, "Whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul." Can we do that? Can we, and when good times are going, we can always say it is well. But when the bad things are happening, when the finances are bad, or when we just lost our job, or we just found out we have cancer, or our kids are failing out of school, or grandkids, or what, can we still say it is well? It is well with my soul. Well, I love that he didn't even stop there. He went on, and the third verse talks about the about the redemption work of Christ, and then the fourth verse of Christ coming back. It is well, and I'm looking to the future, not to the present. Well, I just love that. I love that's part of that story. Well, Philip Bliss wrote the music for that hymn, and he had finished writing it and wanted to go on a vacation with his wife. And in 1876, again, D.L. Moody called him and wanted him to meet him in Chicago to help with a revival. He and his wife headed towards Chicago, and they were on a train. The train went over a bridge, a snow-covered bridge, and the bridge collapsed and fell. Well, he got out, but his wife, Lucy, did not. He went back in to get her. He told someone else. He said, "If I can't get her out, I'll perish with her." And he did. Neither one of them came out, survived. Well, they got the luggage. It ended up in Chicago, and they got into his case and found some of the hymns, the last hymns that he wrote. And one of them was, "I will sing of my Redeemer and his wondrous love for me. On the cruel cross he suffered for the curse to set me free. Sing, oh sing of my Redeemer, with his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon, paid the debt, and made me free." I want to sing a couple verses of each of those. Well, actually, I want to sing the first, third, and fourth of "It Is Well," and then the first and last of "I Will Sing." Peace like a river. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well, it is well with my soul, it is well with my soul, it is well, it is well with my soul. My sin, oh the bliss of this glorious thought, my sin not in part, but the whole is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord, oh my soul, it is well with my soul, it is well, it is well with my soul. Last verse. And Lord, haste the day when my face shall be sight, The clouds be rolled back as a scroll. The trump shall resound, and the Lord shall descend. Even so, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my soul. In 575, I will sing of my Redeemer. We'll sing a first and last verse. I will sing of my Redeemer and his wondrous love to me. On the cruel cross he suffered, from the curse to set me free. Sing, oh sing of my Redeemer, with his blood he purchased me. On the cross he healed my burden, paid the debt and made me free. In the last verse, I will sing of my Redeemer and his heavenly love to me. He from death to life hath brought me, Son of God with him to be. Sing, oh sing of my Redeemer, when his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon, paid the debt and made me free. Well, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of all these great hymns and great stories. I didn't even touch the blind poet Fanny Crosby, who wrote over 8,000 hymns, including 17 of them in our hymnal, like Blessed Assurance, To God Be the Glory, Tell Me the Story of Jesus, all ones that she wrote. And then, of course, Bill Gaither and Because He Lives, and John Newton wrote Amazing Grace. If you've not seen the movie that came out a few years ago about the story of John Newton and that hymn, I really recommend it. It's a great movie. That song, I'm sorry, Amazing Grace. It's called Amazing Grace. And that song has been put to a lot of different tunes. I know I'm going to break the mold, the theme right now, but including this one. See if you know what it is. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Blind, but now I see. Yeah, Gilligan's Island. But yeah. And I'll go. There's another one I won't go to for us hippies. Well, I wanted to finish with one. And of course, with an invitation hymn, and of course, the invitation hymn, the most famous one, Just As I Am, which is on page 307. And I just want to read this story to you. This is John 6:37 says, "All that the Father gives me will come to me, and the one who comes to me I will by no means cast out." I'm just going to read you this story. She was... After I get a drink of water. She was an embittered woman, Charlotte Elliott of Brighton, England. Her health was broken. Her disability had hardened her. If God loved me, she muttered, he would not have treated me this way. Hoping to help her, a Swiss minister, Dr. Caesar Milan, visited the Elliots on May 9, 1822. Over dinner, Charlotte lost her temper and railed against God and family in a violent outburst. Her embarrassed family left the room, and Dr. Milan was left alone with her. "You're tired of yourself, aren't you?" he asked. You're holding to your hate and anger because you have nothing else in the world to cling to. Consequently, you've become sour, bitter, resentful. What's your cure? Asked Charlotte. The faith you are trying to despise. Well, as they talked, Charlotte softened some. If I wanted to become a Christian and to share the peace and joy you possess, she finally asked, what would I do? He says, you would give yourself to God just as you are now, with your fightings and fears, hates and loves, pride and shame. You mean I would come to God just as I am? Is that right? Well, Charlotte did come to the Lord just as she was, and her heart was changed that day. As time passed, she found and claimed John 6:37 as a special verse for her. He who comes to me, I will by no means cast out. 16 years later, her brother, Reverend Henry Elliott, was raising funds for a school for the children of poor clergymen. Charlotte wrote a poem, and it was printed across England, sold across England. The leaflet said, sold for the benefit of St. Margaret's Hall, Brighton. Him that cometh to me I will in no wise cast out. Underneath was Charlotte's poem. Well, 16 years later, she never forgot those words that Dr. Milan said to her, because that was the theme of her poem. It is well, just as I am. Only eternity will reveal the vast number of individuals whose lives have been dramatically changed through the use of this one hymn from the pen of an invalid woman. Its message is one that we as believers need to be reminded of frequently, that our eternal standing and peace with God depends solely on Christ's merits and not our own. We can come to him just as we are. I want to pray, and then we're going to sing one verse, and it'll be our close for tonight. So, Lord, thank you. Thank you that we can come to you just as we are. Thank you that we don't have to put on airs. We don't have to clean ourselves up. But even as Christians, and when we make mistakes, we can come to you, and you're there, and you love us, and you forgive us, and you take us. Thank you for these men and women of history, Lord, that you've used to write songs that we sing today that praise your name. Thank you for the blessing of music. Thank you for the blessing of your Son, of him dying on the cross for us. Thank you for your presence here tonight. We love you, Lord. Again, thank you that we can come to you just as we are. When we stand, and we'll close with one verse of Just As I Am. Just as I am, without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou bidst me come to thee, O Lamb of God, I come. I come. Thank you all. Good night.